So in this video I'm going to talk you through the Swiss Army knife process that I was working on with Perry Marshall at his Paradigm Shift workshop last week in Chicago. So the idea of the Swiss Army knife process is to come up with a much wider range of ads, emails, creative approaches to your advertising. And so Perry has a tool for this. So if I switch over into the tool, so this is what the inside of the tool looks like. So the core of the Swiss Army knife process. So in the tool we have a number of blades. So I'll talk more about this in a minute, but the core blade is relationships. So the idea basically is that you would come in and you fill this out for you. So if I just work through this for some of my own inputs. So most ads, if you look at most Google search results pages, most ads talk about you as the advertiser, what your product is, what your features are, what your benefits are. So, my service mostly is email. So email storytelling for coaches. Well, I'll tell you what, let's just leave it as email storytelling. I also do Google Ads consulting. I also do Infusionsoft / funnel building supports. So that isn't a complete list, but in the main, I'd say those are the main things that I'm known for: is email copywriting, Google Ads, and Infusionsoft. My customer tends to be so people who are typically 35 to 60, coach, consultants, experts. Often they're educators in some capacity. So perhaps not a teacher necessarily, but they're often involved in teaching their clients in some way. So in relationship to what I do then, so most ads on the search results page talk about you and your service. If you've got any sophisticated competitors, they'll be talking more about the customer. So who the customer is, what the customer wants. So there's actually a lot more that we can say about the customer as it relates to your service. So there are things that they love, there are things that they hate. So often, so I've already put in here that they love their health. That's sort of like an anecdotal comment that I've noticed from working with my clients. Like they often are into running and yoga, and it's not always true, but often they look after themselves, I think it's fair to say. They love, in some respects, they love marketing, gadgetry, I think I'll spell that wrong. They love I was almost going to write their free time then, but generally they wouldn't view it as free time. But they value their time to go running, even if it's at 6 in the morning. I'm going to call this, so Perry would call this Renaissance time. It's like you time. It's time for you to prioritize things, whether that's you go for a run or you sit in the sauna or whatever it is. So, you can fill these out. So I'm not going to go through all of these blades and fill them all in. I just want to illustrate the principle here. Hate is quite a good one to start with, because so have a think, like, what do these people hate as it relates to your product or service? They hate in some respects they hate Infusionsoft. But more specifically, they hate Infusionsoft complexity and mess. And actually, that could relate to other systems as well. That could be ActiveCampaign or something else. They hate phoning Google for help. They hate hiring marketing help because they've often been burnt in the past. They hate SEO, more specifically the SEO companies who phone them up 6 times a day. So you can carry on, you can come up with a big list of things that they hate. So who is their friend? Their friend is so it could be their long-term staff. So remember, this is in relation to what you do. It could be sometimes they may have an existing marketing consultant in a different capacity. So someone that they found who they can actually trust. So hard to find. So just moving on. So the enemy, the enemy is Google, Facebook, LinkedIn. I don't think the enemy. So the enemy doesn't have to be a company or person. The enemy could be busyness, for example. So negative and positive forces or beliefs. So a negative force or belief is I'm not a marketer. I don't have time. So think about the negative things that they believe. That may or may not be true. It doesn't really matter whether they're true or not. So you could build those out. Positive forces. They love their work. They love their audience, etc. So victim would be you don't. So these are more advanced. So a victim would be someone in your world who has fallen foul of some kind of scam, or someone who's had like $100,000 bill from Google, or so. Yeah, I'm not really thinking of any examples, so I'm going to skip past that. So the hero, hate to say it, but I'm going to have to put Frank Kern in here. It really goes into very well. There's probably a number of sort of high profile-ish marketers. Perry Marshall, etc. Okay, so that's the relationships tool. So then there's various other blades. So the idea with each blade is that, so in Perry's terms, each blade is effectively at a right angle to each other. So what the tool is eventually going to do is get us to combine different blades when we're writing ads. So I'm going to give you a sort of a whistle-top tour of these. But in terms of thinking about any one that we mentioned in the relationships blade, what things can they do, can't they do, or will they do? So Google will raid your bank balance if you sleep at the wheel. So you could apply that capability lens to everyone that you've mentioned in the previous relationships blade. Direct marketing offers, what guarantee do you offer? So, well, if you do a project with me and if you have metrics in place, I guarantee you'll get a 200% return on investments. Free sample, no obligation. So there's other things that I could do with here. So when people, so this is an idea that I'm playing around with at the moment, but when people join my story selling university program, something I'm looking at doing is sending them an Evernote pen, which handwrites stuff that can be transcribed directly into Evernote, which ties into my course. Software I don't really have. Consultation. Sometimes I'll offer 30-minute story consultations, etc. So you can go in and you can fill these out. There's quite a lot here that do apply to me. So you fill that out. You add in your proof. What social proof do you have? So track powerful associations. Worked directly with Perry Marshall. Something I probably don't talk about enough. Unique mechanism. I have my 4 types of story framework. I have my story map research process. So yeah, you would fill those in. Levels of identity. So again, these relate to anyone identified in the relationships blade. And so the blades at the top here are generally more fixed. These are generally more changing. So if you think about beliefs, for example, so Google believes ad writing can be automated. I believe ad writing can never be automated. In the long term, we'll see who is right. Story elements. So what are the things that you might think about in a story is who is the villain in your story? So the villain that many people are wrestling with is confusion for me. It's one of the reasons my business is named the Confusion Clinic. Google is probably the villain in some capacities, even though they don't intend to be, but they end up being the villain by the way that they are. The previous AdWords agency who screwed things up, etc. You know, the story behind the story. So I tell a story about how I accidentally got into AdWords. You know, there's a story behind that which I was trying to sell SMS text messaging services, and someone misunderstood me and asked if I thought I'd asked them about taxes, and then said, well, they don't think that they need text messaging, but can you get me ranked on Google? And that was how I got into AdWords. So that was the story behind the story. So, you know, you fill all of these out. Is there anything in, you know, breaking news, little known facts? People who like your Facebook page can see 4 ads a day instead of 2, etc. Epic stories. So this obviously ties in more closely with what I do. So, and again, this could relate to you. It could relate to the customer. So maybe, you know, the Paradise was, you know, late 90s. Marketing was relatively simple. And then, you know, so, you know, you could work through this, and then a disaster happens. So social media comes along, everyone's really confused, no one really knows how to make it work. Click prices get really expensive. Or, you know, you could also switch this around so that the Paradise was the early 2000s when click prices were really cheap. Disaster, click prices get really expensive, everything's really competitive. So actually that's probably a better story. So click prices skyrockets, sort of late 2000s. So cheap clicks and easy SEO, early 2000s. So so then, you know, disaster happens, so they have the summons, so it's like, oh no, I'm gonna have to learn AdWords. So yeah, they have a fleeting victory. So, you know, perhaps they phone Google for help, and maybe for things improve for 1 day, and then huge negative ROI. Google tells them to spend even more. If this is familiar, then, you know, this plays out every single day. Moment of grace is then discovering Rob Drummond. And then, you know, Get the Kingdom is finally fix AdWords conversion tracking ROI reporting, build successful customer nurture system. So, you know, that's sort of the epic story that kind of surrounds what I do. Moving on to the future, so predictions. Click prices ain't getting no cheaper. Marketing automation tools will come down in price, but become no easier to use. That's my short-term prediction. So, you know, you can fill these out. Any warnings, promises, threats. You know, what's changing in your world. Rise of messenger bots, for example. Shame's a really important one. So, what legitimate moral guilt do they have? Well, so sometimes, or for a long time, earn less money than a regular job. False moral guilt. So then, you know, what chip do they have on their shoulder that maybe isn't true? Are there things in their background that is some source of like emotional pain? Do they blame anyone? Do they blame Google? Do they blame their staff? Do they blame, you know, what kind of, how are they exposed? So that you can go through this. In my world, there are things that they are, you know, perhaps stupid's a bit of a harsh word, but you know, perhaps there are things that they are relatively stupid about. Etc., etc., etc. These are really powerful from an art writing perspective. Okay, so ignorance is probably a better word than stupidity, I guess. So, ignorance about the mechanics of PPC, ignorance about conversion tracking, which is generally true. So, you know, I've given this a quick look over, and I don't want this to be a huge video. So what this tool then does is on the Ideas tab, it pairs up two ideas. So we've got here a moment of grace being discovering Rob Drummond, and then time it being the future. So what you then do is, without sort of overthinking it, you write an idea that relates to both ideas. So this could be as simple as, you know, 5 years from now, you'll be sitting on your porch. Glad you discovered Rob, for example. So, you know, we're not overthinking it at the moment. We might not even use all these ideas. So, you know, we just put them in. When I hit enter, it switches around the blades. So the ignorance about conversion tracking. So we have to combine that blade with this idea. So you want all the sales, but you can't measure ROI from your ads. Next. So this then will keep throwing. So this is like throwing balls at me, and I'm just hitting them in sort of baseball terms. So you know, if you come across a word that like, so rhapsodize, like, you know, I could Google that and find out what it means, or I can just switch it up. So, you know, so I need to combine accidentally got into AdWords by SMS. So this is my story. And then combine that with Google as the villain. So, you know, if I decide that I don't like those blades, I just hit generate new blades and it throws up something else. So then I'm writing an idea about marketing automation tools coming down in price, but not getting easier to use. And then a fleeting victory, Google, you know, you phone Google for help, but things improve for one day. So actually I could sort of combine that. For one day, then blow up and then headache. So the idea basically is just to come up with lots and lots of ideas. We're not overthinking it at the moment, so we might not even use all of these ideas. And actually when you're reviewing the ideas, you can put a little favourites by the ones that you like the most. What I can then do is on the Ads tab, what the Ads tab will do is it will throw up ideas that we've drafted here, and it will. So this is more of like a refinements tab. You don't even need to use this. Like, you could just take all of your ideas and go and write some ads from them. But actually, so in terms of taking an idea and converting it into a more long form Facebook ad, or a slightly longer display ad, or maybe an outline email, then the advantage that you've got here is that you can add in character breaks here. So 5 years from now, you'll be sitting on your porch, glad you discovered Rob. So it could be as simple as Google, Facebook, and LinkedIn headaches will be a thing of the past. So perhaps that could be your ad. And I could put in line breaks and I could carry on that story. I could pull in stories. I could pull in a customer story. I could pull in a personal story. I could expand that out, depending on the format of what you're creating here. So that's the tool. So the idea with this is to get the input, is to get a good range of input in here, come up with a range of ideas that are nothing like any of the ads that you're running. This is not just a Google AdWords thing, although Google AdWords Display is a very good use of this. This applies to Google AdWords Display. It applies to search ads as well. It applies to YouTube. It applies to Facebook ads. It applies to emails. It's about widening the creative net of what you're saying in your marketing. So soft call to action. If you would like to work through this with me, if you see value in doing this, then just reach out and I will go over the next steps. Hopefully that's been useful, a bit of an insight into what we were doing with Perry last week, and I will speak